are now listening to a Forward Mile Podcast Network production.
All right, and welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are sitting in Studio A. We are Token Tony-less today, but that's all right. We still press on with a great cast of characters. I got Spike on mic, too.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, like 6:30 at night, but yeah, good morning.
That's all right. We've got a special guest in with us. You may remember him from previous podcasts in my world. But we have resident baseball enthusiast extraordinaire, expert, all the good E's.
And now you've raised the
bar. Yeah, this is Andrew on the phone joining us from sunny Florida. What's the temperature over there?
Today it was actually pretty nice, about 70, 72, 73.
Ooh, I can only be envious of that. It's like, what, 49, 50 here?
Yeah, something like it's a little chillier than I expected, which explains the shorts. I don't pay attention to the weather report before I leave the house.
I always err on the side of shorts. I also have the producer in studio. She's behind the glass. She's working the crack research staff. Desiree.
Is my mic even on? Oh, hi.
Is my mic even on?
What kind of two-bit operation do you think we're running here?
I know. We paid the bills this month.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into it. We're still, kind of on the cleanup from Super Bowl, 52. We're getting a little bit more bits and pieces of the Malcolm Butler update. We have definitely an interesting situation with the Colts Patriots rivalry kind of rearing its ugly head again. We'll touch into those with other NFL announcements going on. We got a lot to talk about, Spike. What's been going on in your world post 52?
It's actually been a lot of talking to my dad, who is still back in the Boston area. He listens to all of these sports radio talk shows out there. So basically every time I talk to him, I get about 3 or 4 new conspiracy theories that are floating around. So that's always it's always interesting to hear him regurgitate the drunken ramblings of the garbage men from Brockton as, like, fact.
All right. Hey, Parks, I know that, Super Bowl 52 was an interesting conundrum for you. I get a lot of shit on my text messages about the Patriots, not only from you, but from others, obviously. But I know you're a Cowboys fan, so what's the feeling like sitting there watching Patriots and Eagles?
Well, it's interesting because, as you say, I've been a Cowboys fan since I was 13. After Baltimore hightailed it out of, the Colts hightailed it out of Baltimore in '84 in the middle of a blizzard. So I had to find a team really quickly because I'm from Maryland. So I became a Cowboys fan. But the interesting thing is, my family, my wife, all of her boys and her parents and her brother and his brother's wife were all here. They're all Eagles fans because they're from Philadelphia. So I had, like you said, an interesting conundrum. Do I root for the Eagles as a Cowboys fan and go against my family, or do I side with the family? And I finally came to the conclusion that blood's thicker than water, and I was an Eagles fan on Sunday. Sorry, Aaron.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, hey, they we've said that from, what was it, Sunday night we did the podcast, about 2 hours after the actual Super Bowl. And, hey, look, the Patriots got beat. They just got beat.
If we did an actual podcast that night, I don't remember it because I was in a blur.
Yeah, cocaine's a hell of a drug. Well, let's talk about a little bit of the collateral damage from Super Bowl 52. And Malcolm Butler released a statement. I'm not going to read the exact verbatim, but basically downplaying the fact that there may have been rumors that he went to a concert, had marijuana, et cetera, et cetera. He thanked the organization, still kind of took the high road, kept it classy. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors because Bill Belichick's pretty good at keeping that behind closed doors. So for the little tidbit of cheese that we get right now, Andrew, your thoughts kind of on, Malcolm Butler obviously not playing the Super Bowl and now kind of taking the high road at this point, penning the I wouldn't say a letter, but basically a Facebook post or whatever it was, Twitter or whatever.
Well, it's funny because, I'm not that big of a Patriots fan, and I actually didn't even realize it until after the game was over when I started seeing all of the articles. I started reading them. And, it does that. Obviously, when you've got one of your best defensive players on the bench for the entire biggest game of the year, something's amiss. And one of the things I've always loved about Belichick is he does put those things as a high priority. You remember the Aaron Hernandez situation. He immediately cut him.
Right.
The fact that he put one of his best players on the bench for the biggest game of the year shows that Belichick, has the right priorities in place. Just read about the possible marijuana yesterday, so I don't know much about it. I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do, but I applaud Belichick for that decision. Especially in this day and age of what our kids are seeing with our celebrities and our athletes. I hope we find out exactly what happens and this story goes. As a school teacher, I think this is a good learning opportunity for, students and kids. It's just that it doesn't matter how good you are, you still have to do the right things as far as character goes and following the rules.
Yeah, and Spike, we've talked about BB, and he's obviously a high character, high class, high moral guy, and he's never been one to shy away from getting rid of somebody or taking, disciplinary action about somebody. To bench him or to do what he did, keeping him active and not playing him any plays, Spike, what side of the theoretical conspiracies are you leaning towards right now?
It's just such a weird thing. I think you brought it up before that if you were going to punish Butler, why keep him active? Like, why punish the rest of the team that way? If Butler had broken the rules, if he had done this, that, and the other thing, fine, then deactivate him and bring in somebody like an Alan Branch.
Somebody who could maybe stop the run.
Exactly. Or somebody like Hollister as an extra tight end who may have blocked and prevented that strip sack at the end of the game. Now we have all these what ifs.
We're not talking about Deion Sanders being benched. We're talking about Malcolm Butler. And yes, you remember him for the Seattle interception. But, to be honest with you and I watched the games. He's been average this year.
Oh, he's definitely been average, but he's also been in for almost 98% of defensive snaps.
Sure, no, I understand.
So to have him in for 0 in the Super Bowl...
It's alarming.
Yeah, something happened. Now, the weird thing about the statement from Malcolm Butler is, he's clearly done with New England. He has said that they gave up on him, and even in the statement, it was a goodbye letter. So we know he's not coming back. But he's still giving a Patriot non-answer to the issue. He said, this is all the stuff that I didn't do, but we don't know what he actually did. And that's sort of the thing that still is weird in my mind.
There's no true smoking gun at this point.
And now, if he was breaking team rules, if he was out and, if he was doing this, that, and the other thing, if he was at a concert, if he was smoking weed, if he was doing anything else, that's fine. Then
I got to imagine Malcolm Butler in this system's not dumb enough to do that shit.
Oh no,
the night before the Super Bowl.
He absolutely isn't, especially if his family's in town.
Right.
Then he's going to be spending time with his family. So I don't know how those rumors got started. But if something like that did happen, then fine, be a man and own up to it. And if it didn't, then he came out and said in the statement that he didn't. But then tell us what happened. We need to know, because I'm sure Butler. He doesn't strike me as a type of guy that's just going to. If Belichick says you're not going to play. He's not going to question it. He's not going to say why. He's not going to say, he needs to know what's going on, and it's just such a weird situation.
But Andrew, here we got a situation where Butler is denying all of these reports coming out, like the marijuana, the concert, the breaking team rules, the missing curfew. But when Belichick was asked, he specifically said it was strictly football. So what are we to believe? If we're to believe it's strictly football, we're saying that Butler, the 5'10 corner, or 5'11, whatever he is, didn't strategically match up with Alshon Jeffrey and the cast of receivers who are all above 6 feet. But we're also hearing reports of everything that Spike and I just touched on. So if we're calling one of them a liar at this point, and if it's Belichick,
right,
it's a really interesting take to try to go after the beast.
I read an article today that said that Belichick elaborated at some point that it's more than we can just talk about right here. It tells you there's probably a whole track record of stuff that has occurred, and Belichick probably has just finally said, I've had it.
Yeah, I mean, but in my opinion, and I don't care what team this is, and obviously we have a vested interest, Spike and I, but, I don't care what team you are. There better be a body count if you're sitting a guy for the Super Bowl who's one of your better defenders. I better be hearing about the bodies I better be hearing that a killing spree went on the night before. If you're telling me breaking a curfew or maybe a little weed.
Gosh, I can't remember who it was, but it was a former Patriot who obviously is no longer on the team, had said that there's definitely Belichick definitely has his favorites when it comes to this type of thing, where he turns a blind eye. And, Jimmy Johnson did the same thing with the Cowboys in the mid-'90s with those teams. And he was upfront about it. He said, I treat Emmett and I treat Troy and I treat Michael, I treat those guys differently than I treat the rookies or the younger guys. And so I wish I could remember the name of the Patriot that I read about today, but he said there are definitely situations where Belichick does turn a blind eye to things with his superstars. I don't know how true that is, but that's one person's opinion.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that, and like you said with Jimmy Johnson, that's probably got to be going on with every coach in every sport ever. I mean, like, if LeBron's missing team curfew on Game 7 of the Finals, there's no way in hell he's missing the game. So if Tom Brady showed up 20 minutes late to curfew, there's no way in hell he's missing the Super Bowl. I get it. Guys like that have earned the superstar reputation to say, hey, look, Coach, I was 20 minutes late. It's not going to happen again. There would be no issue. I don't know what Malcolm Butler has or hasn't done over the last 4 years. I mean, like I said, Malcolm Butler will always be a hero in New England sports lore. We can't take any away from him in that. Just like Brandon Graham with his strip sack will never have a problem getting a cheesesteak in Philadelphia ever again. But I'd like to kind of flip the script here and think, I know that you say that it's kind of a penned goodbye letter. I'm wondering if Malcolm Butler's value on the free agency is not what he thinks it's going to be. I could see Malcolm coming back to try to redeem himself in this spot. Spike.
I mean, maybe. Obviously, the Patriots are going to offer him short money. I mean, it's going to be.
I would see somewhere around what he's getting now, 3.8.
Yeah, and it will be just 1 or 2 years as a prove it to me kind of contract. But let's say, and I mean, I have no insider knowledge, so I don't know if this is true. But if the Pats are offering him between 3 and 4 for a year or two, and somebody else comes in and says, we'll offer you 5 at 3 years, does he come back to New England and just prove that he can be a character guy? I mean, is this like, so we've seen it locally at UNLV where a football player at a Division I school will go out and they'll fuck up in a big way with drugs or alcohol or something, and they'll come specifically to UNLV just because of the temptations around them. And then they're able to resist everything. And then they can go out and say, look, I'm a character guy now. I've learned my lesson. I've done this, that, and the other thing. And it seems to work out. They'll be known not for their mistake, but for their redemption, essentially. So I wonder if Butler, it's an interesting point. I wonder if Butler is trying to do that same thing, where he's trying to redeem himself in the eyes of the Belichicks and the Krafts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the perfect role model in the situation, and if Belichick's really interested in bringing Butler back, which, I mean, let's be honest, why wouldn't you? Batamosi, what's the other guy's name? Jordan Richards, they were awful.
Yeah. Rowe was terrible.
Eric Rowe proved that he could not really sit on the field with a second receiver.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, a guy I look to in this spot, if Bill Belichick really has any interest in Butler coming back, would be Randy Moss. I think you kind of approach Randy, because remember Randy, when he left New England and went to Minnesota and his career ended, he basically said, I regret the way I ran my way out of town in New England. So I kind of see a situation where Bill, if he really wants Butler, what do you think? I mean, you kind of take the Randy Moss angle, fresh Hall of Famer, to maybe spread some influence on Malcolm.
That's going to take a lot of ego swallowing to be able to go back to that situation after being benched the entire Super Bowl. But I mean, it can happen. I see your point. And maybe athletes look for different ways to challenge themselves, and maybe this is one way that Malcolm Butler can challenge himself to be a better player and a better person this year.
Yeah, I mean, Spike, you talked about it. If somebody offers him, 5 for 25, I can't see a situation where he stays because that's definitely not coming from Bill. So I think there's a situation where I think it's a very small chance, but if Bill really wanted Butler back, I think there's maybe a possibility where, I don't know, I just kind of see a situation where with that letter, the way I read it was, hey, look, thanks for the organization, for everything you've given me. The odds are that I'm kind of going to be out of here. But, hey, I'm still a team player. I'm still, a top player on our defense. If you want me, we can talk numbers, we can talk terms, but there's a chance, I'm not closing the door on this chapter.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility where I could see him coming back. That letter to me just sounded like such a goodbye. Thanks for the great years that I've been here. I've been to the conference championship or Super Bowl every year that he's been in the league. It would take a lot. It would take the hometown discount. It would take the redemption factor.
Does winning matter?
Winning does matter to certain guys. I mean, you look at a guy like Jamie Collins, who came from the situation with the Patriots and then got traded to Cleveland, and now Cleveland, after the 1-15 season last year, he signed the extension with them. So, for some guys it's all about the bucks. For some guys it's about winning, and for some guys it's once they get the ring, then they don't care. They'll go to wherever the money is. Like
fair enough.
Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, or who was it that went to Atlanta? Ty Law or Lawyer? I always get those two confused.
Lawyer Malloy. I think Ty Law went to Denver.
Yeah, after their Patriots careers, I always get those two guys confused.
Lawyer Malloy got cut, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't he? He got cut and went to the Bills.
Yeah, Malloy went to the Bills, but Law got the big contract.
Yeah,
and that was
Kansas City. They did Kansas City. I think he got the contract with Kansas City.
I don't know. Well,
we'll have to get the crack research to look up Ty Law's numbers.
We have to figure out because my memory of it is hazy. But essentially, it was they got the ring, and then they said, "I have done what I expect or what I wanted to do in this league, and now I am just going to get life-changing money and do what I need to do."
Well, Andrew, I was going to say, in this situation, Spike kind of touched on it. Is this a situation where the money means? I mean, Malcolm's got 2 Super Bowl rings at this point. Put your mind in the side of in a guy where he basically says, I've been kind of run out of this city. I got 2 rings already. I mean, where do I go from here?
That's a good question. I mean, as you already said, you could go back. Maybe, as you said, he tests the free agent market and, lands a 5-year deal with somebody who needs him. Cowboys will take him. We can't cover you, Aaron.
Yeah, that's true. You guys have this weird connection that if Sean Lee's not in the game, you might as well forfeit.
Well, yeah. Sean Lee is he's the glue that holds that defense together. Absolutely.
So, all right, well, obviously I would imagine there's going to be more coming out from the Butler story, but let's look at a couple other situations. And, I mean, I don't know if the media is trying to make more of this than it is and anything right now. I feel like this Super Bowl reflection is more of a testament to the Patriots getting beat than the Eagles actually winning. Have you guys noticed that in the media a lot lately? And I don't think it's a fair assessment. I mean, look, you and I have talked. Hey, look, the Pats got beat. I mean, yes, they're the greatest team of the 2000s. Nobody can argue that. But, I mean, this Pats loss, it's a magnitude that has been exponentially times by 100 because of who they are. I mean, let's pick another. If Pittsburgh went in there and lost to Philadelphia last week or last Sunday, it's not pasted all over every front page of every single newspaper, every single website. We're looking at, why is the magnitude of is it because of what it is? The greatest team of the 2000s lost the game.
You've got a team that never won a Super Bowl against the team that's won the most, and they took them down. I mean, that's that. That's
second most, but I understand.
It's like David slaying Goliath.
Right. Then why aren't we talking more about Philadelphia's win? I mean, maybe I'm just seeing the wrong headlines, but I feel like we're talking more about Patriots' loss than we're talking about Philadelphia's victory.
I don't know.
I'm not, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to deflect the fact that the Patriots got beat. They got beat by a team who on that day played better, never let their foot off the gas, and the second half adjustments just weren't enough. I mean, the Pats had a lead in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, it wasn't like, a monumental upset. They played tough with them. This team wasn't bad. I understand it was a backup quarterback with Nick Foles, but I just feel like, to me, I don't know, maybe it's just a jaded, biased opinion. I don't feel like this is such a monumental upset. I mean, we've been watching Philly throughout this playoffs, this underdog mentality. They're not a bad team. I mean, Nick Foles is not Carson Wentz, but, they're still a good enough franchise around him to be able to beat New England. I mean, New England had a lot of flaws, and in my opinion, of the 8 Super Bowl teams, they may have been 7th or 8th best of the 8 Super Bowl appearances.
I agree with that. And, now that you bring that up, that's a good point because, like I said, my wife is an Eagle fan, her kids are Eagle fans, her dad's an Eagle fan, and since about week 4 or 5, I continue to say the Eagles look great. The Eagles look good. I mean, they look great on both sides of the ball. They were a complete team.
Right.
They played defense. They're a little weak on the corners on deep balls, but other than that, they were a solid team. They got after the quarterback. They played great run defense. And then when they got Ajayi, or however you pronounce his name, I mean, that just put them over the top.
Right.
When Wentz went down, there were a lot of people saying there's no way they can do it now. And I kept reminding people, Foles is no slouch. The only reason why he went backwards was because of that elbow injury. The elbow injury seemed to fix itself after the first game he was in there. I mean, he made a couple completions downfield over 20 yards, and then in the playoffs, it was like it wasn't even there. And so, you got a quarterback that can make some plays, and you've got a complete team. And, yeah, I mean, and the Patriots had their weaknesses. I mean, they had a lot of weaknesses on defense.
So, Spike, looking at that, we're talking about this, like I said, I mean, whether it's a fair assessment or not, in my opinion, it's the 7th or 8th best of the 8 Super Bowl appearances, the 7th or 8th best team of the Super Bowl appearances that they've had. But we wake up the next day, they're the favorites next year. I mean, they haven't addressed anything. They lost the Super Bowl by getting beat by a team, and they wake up as the 4-1 favorite next year.
Right, and so I'll address that second part first because I think that's the more interesting of the storylines at this point. The Patriots need help at offensive line. They might need help at tight end if Gronkowski retires, which God help us if that actually happens.
Yeah.
They need a backup quarterback / heir apparent to Tom Brady. They need help all over the defense. Especially if Butler walks. Then this is a team that needs things.
Amendola's a free agent too.
Amendola's a free agent. They have 4 draft picks this year. 4. That's it.
What about Edelman?
Edelman will be back.
Yeah, Edelman will be back.
What will we get out of him?
Right.
We get the cuts and the elusiveness as we had. I mean, an ACL injury took down, what's his name?
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and it took him down for a long time. I mean, this is year 2, and he's still not 100%.
Right, so, you never know with a guy who's shifty and crafty and cutting all the time.
Right, so this is a team that not only has a lot of holes to fill and no draft picks in which to do it, but they've also just lost their defensive coordinator. So the fact that they're the favorites to win the Super Bowl is 100% on Brady and Belichick. I mean, that's just Vegas trying to cash in on the fact that these are 2 guys that always seem to be in the mix, that this team always seems to be right there, and they're counting on people to just hammer that line as the favorites.
Look at it,
and that's the report that came out yesterday said the only reason a lot of books were even profitable this football season is because people missed the futures bets on the Patriots and other teams.
And Steelers and everything.
Because they got killed on the Super Bowl itself.
On the actual handle, they got killed, but prop bets and futures bets is what brought them back. They had the shortest take in, I think they said, almost 25 years. They had $1.1 million in actual profit across all the sports books in Nevada.
Jesus. I mean, and that's just baffling to me, but
I'm sure some of those guys were sitting in their boss's chair. I mean, the public pound of Eagles and over hit.
I'm not a gambling guy at all. Aaron knows that. And I took Eagles plus 4.5 all day long, and I won. I mean, it was a no-brainer.
Oh, it was a no-brainer
Now, that's something that we can talk about quite extensively because one of the things I was banking on was going into the game, Brady and Belichick's postseason record against teams they had never faced in the regular season, or that they hadn't faced that season in the regular season, was 15-0 and they were going against a backup quarterback. So I looked at it as this is Patriots minus 12 all day. But
Well,
that's
your rose-colored glasses on.
that's neither here nor there. But I mean, to go back to your original point of, did the Eagles win or did the Patriots lose? I think the Patriots lost. I think they were outcoached, especially especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm glad that Token Tony isn't here because he might smack me since
that's his new head coach.
The Patriots defensive coordinator who blew the Super Bowl for them is now the head coach of the Detroit Lions.
Who is Tony's favorite team.
Yeah, so, I mean, I made this point during the playoffs about a couple of the games, but, I'll say it again. If I tell you before the Super Bowl, Brady throws for 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 500 yards.
And 33 points.
How on earth do you bet against the Patriots in that situation?
Yeah.
It was just the defense couldn't stop anybody, and especially in that fourth quarter where they had the lead, you knew that Philadelphia was going to score again. There was just too much time on the clock. It was the fact that New England's defense couldn't stop them, and the drive that Philadelphia used to score took over 7 minutes in that fourth quarter. That's what killed them. And that is coaching, and that is New England losing the game rather than Philadelphia winning.
Now, here's a scenario I thought would come up. I haven't seen it. Obviously, we've talked about Butler. I hate to get back on Butler, but, he's been the talk. But a scenario that I haven't really heard anywhere in the media is that Zach Ertz touchdown. He was being covered by Devin McCourty.
Yep.
That's a situation where I understand Butler, not one man a team makes, but is that a situation where Butler may have had McCourty was blown. He fell. He tried it. He just had no shot, it looked like, against Ertz, a tight end who has not the greatest mobility. Right. Is that a situation where Butler right there makes that stopping play? That was third down. They kick the field goal. They go up by, 2? And then you got Brady with 2 and change left in time.
Right. And, going back even further is that assuming the Patriots had been healthy,
how do you not see a slant there?
Well, that wouldn't have been McCourty or Butler. That would have been Hightower.
Okay, well, Hightower's been long gone for a while.
But, Hightower...
I'm talking about a guy who could have played.
Hightower would have been on the tight end. But, yeah, at that point, theoretically, putting a corner on a tight end, unless you're in, a dime package, that seems a little soft. But I could definitely see Butler making a huge difference there.
To me, the whole play read slant. They weren't trying to score there. They were trying to get the first down and continue to run clock. Because like you said, you leave Brady with 2:21, you're like, oh shit. He's still. I'm never out of this with Brady and 2 minutes and 21 seconds left. So to me, it screams slant, get the 8, go down, continue running the clock. Obviously, he was untouched basically to the end zone and dove in and got it and whatever. I don't know. Just to me, it seemed like no one's really talking about the fact that if you're talking about Malcolm Butler, because they're talking about Malcolm Butler like he's Deion Sanders. He's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's the only situation in the entire game, personally, I could see where his presence was missed. Other than getting blown by Alshon Jeffrey, but that's when finally Patricia's like, dude,
I think Gilmore's a word in that sentence because I'm not sure that you want to say that Butler got blown by Alshon Jeffrey.
Other than Eric Rowe getting toasted by Alshon Jeffrey.
There we go. Much better verb.
I said what I said. But, Andrew, like Spike said, we're talking about a team filled with lots of holes, lots of questions. Amendola, Gronkowski, Malcolm Butler, Patricia's gone. The Pats being the favorites next year doesn't really, doesn't really look to me like there should be.
Aaron, it's like I've been telling you for 4 or 5 years, nothing you don't already know. They have the greatest NFL quarterback coach in NFL history. And if Brady's coming back, that duo is amazing.
Sure.
And so
they mask a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. That system that Belichick has put together in New England is, it's a winning system. And so at this point, you've got to look at them as the favorites. I don't understand why the Eagles couldn't be the favorites right now, but once again, you go back to Belichick and Brady, and now you go back to a pissed-off Belichick, and nobody wants to face a pissed-off Belichick.
That's fair enough. I don't doubt that. I think that just in case, you're right. The AFC, where it stands right now, is no better than it was 2 weeks ago at this point. And the Patriots, as their roster stands, are the class. Obviously, you're getting Deshaun Watson back in Houston. That could make them a lot better. They came pretty close to beating New England this year in New England. The Steelers will be back. They seem to Belichick seems to kind of have Tomlin's number at this point, so they don't really worry me at this point. We don't know what the Bell contract situation is going to be with that. I mean, like you said, they've only got 4 draft picks in the draft. I mean, where do you see – I mean, as it stands right now, I mean, do you see another AFC team that should be, maybe not in Vegas, but should be on paper better than New England right now? If everybody came back, with the exception of Butler, if everything came back status quo, Butler and Patricia are gone, do you still feel like they're the best team? I mean, the AFC is not – like, I look at the NFC, and they're all – decently average, but they're all clumped together. At any given time this year, Minnesota could have won. Philly, obviously Philly did win. I mean, there was a lot of teams. You look at Seattle was good, LA was good, Carolina, the 3 teams in the NFC South, they were all collectively right about the same. I don't really feel that parity in the AFC like I do in the NFC. So, I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world for the Pats to be the favorite, but at the same time, I don't feel on paper they are the favorite.
I mean, they have to be the favorite coming out of the AFC, even with Deshaun Watson coming back healthy. Mariota obviously has improved. The Jacksonville storyline, which is crazy. Pittsburgh, like you said, even you can make an argument that Buffalo is on the up and up. I mean, you have teams that can compete, but there's still no coach like Belichick. There's still no quarterback like Brady, and this is what Vegas is counting on, that those 2 guys will be able to lead that team to, at the very least, another conference championship, if not the Super Bowl victory.
Where does Kirk Cousins kind of play a role in all of this?
Obviously depends on where he goes. I see him more going to an NFC team just so he has a better chance of sticking it to the Redskins for letting him go, because Arizona's, for me, the clearer spot that he lands. But obviously they're putting up the big campaign for him to go to Denver. There's a
lot of money tied up in quarterbacks in Denver.
Right, but there's a bunch of teams that could actually use him and that would want his services, so there's going to be a bidding war for him, and then it's just a matter of him finding where he feels comfortable and the right fit and all that. So, but yeah, you're right. If he does go to an AFC team, then you have to look at how that team, like if their defense is good enough. Like if he goes to Denver, then all of a sudden Denver, you have to talk about New England and Denver as 1A and 1B in that conference. If he goes to Buffalo, I still don't know that you could make that argument. Obviously, the T-Mobile and Patrick Peterman or whatever the guy's fucking name is, I don't know.
Nathan Peterman experience.
Who cares? The future Home Depot employee is not going to work out. So it's one of those things where it's going to depend on the situation for him to make one of those teams great. Because if he goes to like Cleveland's all of a sudden not going to go 12-4. They need a lot more help. But if he goes to Denver, goddamn right they're going to be competitive.
Right, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I think Kirk Cousins puts a wrinkle in this. There's a lot of places he can go. It instantly makes a lot of AFC teams instant contenders, like you're talking about. So, I mean, it's a weird situation. He's going to be kind of the first domino that creates a lot of effect in this. We talked about Foles, and the more and more I thought about trading him at his highest point, I think the odds are is that Philly is probably going to keep Nick Foles at this point until they know what they got out of Carson Wentz.
I think they already know what they got with Carson Wentz. I mean, I think don't you think right now is the time to trade Foles?
Well, the problem is that Carson Wentz injured a lot more than just his ACL, and they're talking about a 12 to 14-month recovery, and that means pretty much he might miss most, if not all, of next season as well. So I think until you know what you have, I don't know if you can really get rid of a guy who can technically kind of get you back to the Super Bowl in the NFC.
I didn't realize he was going to be out for that long.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, he tore a meniscus, tore an LCL, a PCL, an ACL, and he's not quite on Bridgewater status, but he's out for longer than what they believe. They believe it's an 8 to 14-month injury, and they're not leaning towards the 8. So I mean, you're talking about, a Super Bowl winning quarterback who is on your bench, under your control. I really don't feel there's a need to move right now if you really feel like you can be competitive with this team again, even without Carson Wentz.
No, obviously they have to keep him to see what happens with Wentz. Sure.
I mean, Spike, we were talking about it last Sunday, or this Sunday, or whatever, after the Super Bowl. I mean, we were talking about if Buffalo's got 21 and 22, is there a scenario where you can trade Foles and still kind of put all your eggs in a hurt quarterback?
I mean, it's tough because if you're looking at a team that
they're in win now, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, they can't win a Super Bowl and then fall back into the 6-10 mediocrity of the rest of the NFC. Like, the fans, especially fans in Philadelphia, those fucking psychopaths would never allow the team to actually do that, even knowing that Carson Wentz is going to be coming back, say, in 2019.
Right.
But, the flip side of that is if you do keep Foles, then you run the risk of him regressing to the norm. Then if you try to trade him, or, if you try to do like a sign and trade, like an NBA type deal, then you might not be able to get as high a value as you would for a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think the problem is, given those two options, you have to keep Foles, you have to roll with him, and you have to keep him around Wentz so that way he can be the mentor to Wentz and, kind of continue to show him the right way to do it. Because you have both of these guys, I was just looking up their contracts, both of these guys are signed through this year for under $8 million apiece. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at around a $15 million cap hit for next year.
For two quarterbacks.
For two quarterbacks, it's not the worst situation in the world. You can't disappoint that fan base after you've delivered the first Super Bowl victory in team history. You can't, like I said, regress back to the mediocrity of the rest of the NFC. I think you have to keep both for this year, even though it's kind of a painful pill to swallow. You have your quarterback of the future in Wentz. You have plenty of options. You just have to kind of, take it. And if you get less value for Foles, or if you let him walk as a free agent completely, that's just the price you have to pay.
Now, Spike, look at this. And a scenario that kind of came into my head is Foles comes back, they keep him, they hold on to him. He plays the first, 8 weeks of the season. And the only guy I can really compare him to at this point is Tom Brady. And I know I'm not jumping into the legend status of Tom Brady. I'm talking about the guy who was a backup quarterback, won the Super Bowl, and eventually supplanted Drew Bledsoe for this job for the rest of time. I look at a situation where Foles comes out, wins the Super Bowl, wins MVP, yada, 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 comes out, plays 8 games, lights out. I mean, he's fantastic. He is like the 27-2 Nick Foles from the first Chip Kelly year. What do you do with Carson Wentz at that point?
So he was like the Case Keenum to the Teddy Bridgewater.
Okay, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that, Carson Wentz is supposed to be the future. But, if Nick Foles turns into a superstar is a hard word, and it's hard to foreshadow that, but Nick Foles turns into basically what Tom Brady could be, or Tom Brady, was right after the Super Bowl. He never relinquished the job for 18 years. Obviously. So if Foles is playing lights out football for 8 weeks and Wentz, you don't bring him. I mean, I can't say, if they're 8-0 or 7-1, you don't disrupt that, right?
I mean, you can't. I think the only situation where you can disrupt that is if Wentz is not only healthy, but that he's the Carson Wentz of old and he's not going to have any lingering issues from that injury, and what you're going to get out of him, and it's before the trade deadline. Because that way you can bring in Wentz, trade Foles to somebody that thinks that they're only a quarterback away, and then ride Wentz the rest of the way out and just hope that Foles doesn't come back to bite you in the ass in like a conference championship game. I mean, it's an exact scenario where all the stars have to align in just the right way for that to work out.
It happens.
But that's the only way that I can see Carson Wentz getting his job back, assuming that Foles is playing lights out. Now, if Foles goes in and he starts the year 2-6, and Wentz comes back,
no, that's not a problem. I'm talking about a guy who's 8-0, 7-1.
Yeah.
A QBR up over the hundreds, etc. Andrew, if we have a situation like that where Spike says the stars align, do you see Wentz potentially in 2019 in a different uniform?
I mean, I guess anything is possible. We've had these situations before. I guess you have to look at the whole picture. I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I look back at the Romo, Prescott situation.
Right.
And we saw what happened. When Romo came back and was healthy, Prescott was, 4-1 or something like that. And, Jerry Jones, because Jerry Jones calls all the shots. He decided that, Romo was going to stay on the bench and Prescott was the future. So, I think in a situation like that, you have to get all of your brain power together and sit down in a room and talk it out, hammer it out, and whatever you decide, you got to go with,
Fair enough. I think Doug Peterson's in. We always talk about that if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I think he's in the complete opposite. You've got two quarterbacks, you've got two quarterbacks at this point. He's got. I mean, he's already come out and said basically when Wentz is ready, he's going to have the reins. I think he's speaking now into a sense of we don't know what Nick Foles is going to do. I mean, I don't know if Nick Foles is necessarily ready to accept that role.
Right, and the flip side of that is you don't know what you're going to get with Carson Wentz. Even when he comes back, how healthy is he?
Right.
Like you said, this is an 8 to 14-month injury. So it's possible that the coaching staff there decides, Wentz is still hurt, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We're just not going to bring him back. You ride out Foles for the season, see what you get, and then bring Carson in next year.
Look at a situation if Foles is absolutely terrible and it takes Carson Wentz 10 weeks to get fully healthy and you're, 2-8 next year. It's kind of like the Andrew Luck. Hey, we're not competing. Why bring him back at this point?
Right.
But then you've got Foles. You've lost all value in what you had in February to trade him. So it's like you could have had number 22. God forbid, you may have had number 12 with Cincinnati if Cincinnati was willing to trade. Cincinnati does some dumb shit sometimes. I mean, they brought Marvin Lewis back for God's sakes. So I'm just saying, it's just a situation where I like your theory, Spike, about hey, you got to roll the dice, and if Foles walks in free agency, then so be it. But I think the only reason Foles is walking in free agency is if he actually plays terrible. I think like you said, the trade deadline is usually week 8, I think.
Yeah, about that.
So I think at that point in time, you would know, hey, Wentz, you're going to know what you got. I mean, I don't know what Sudfeld is, their third guy. I don't know if he's anything special or if he's anything to be able to be a stopgap. Trade Foles now, play Sudfeld until Carson Wentz is ready. I think Doug Peterson's bought himself. I mean, I know Philly's crazy, but I think Doug Peterson's bought himself at least a calendar year to because they're going to have to play a first place schedule this year too. Don't forget, they didn't play a first place schedule last year.
That's true.
So they're going to have to play. They're going to have to play a first place schedule. So we'll see. That's not easy to navigate. Not everybody's like the Patriots. A lot of teams who jump in first place. Look at Carolina. I mean, you talk about all these Super Bowl hangovers. It's because they actually have to play a first place schedule next year. It's not always just because we made the Super Bowl, we're having a hangover. It's because your schedule just got exponentially harder than the one before.
Right, and the other side of that is, to quote Bill Belichick after last year's Super Bowl, they've now lost 5 weeks on their draft preparation because they had to prepare for the playoffs in the Super Bowl. Because that's Belichick always looking on the negative side of things. But, yeah, no, you're right. I mean, this is a team that's going to have to come out there. I still think that you have to compete in Philadelphia. You can't tank. Well, now that I say that,
tanking. I know what you're saying.
No, but now that I say that, I think back to the 76ers and realize that they've been tanking for the last.
They've been trusting
decade.
the process for a decade.
So maybe I'm not.
I just think with Philly, even as irrational as Philly fan are, I think Doug Peterson could have bought a year. But it's not like he's trying to say, he's not trying out this 2 quarterback system to try to see which one's better. I could see Philly fan being understanding of, hey, look, Foles got us a number 22 in the draft. I mean, Wentz comes back, we can bide our time with a good defense, and we don't know what Nick Sudfeld is, or I don't even know if his name is Nick.
Yeah, Sudfeld.
I thought his name was Nick, but anyways, I mean, we don't know what Sudfeld can give us. Who knows? He may be just as capable as Nick Foles at leading me through 9 weeks of the season with that defense and those 2 running backs if they can get Blunt back.
Right. I mean, they would need Blunt. They would need their defense to play better than they did this year, because what you're getting theoretically, instead of a superstar like a Wentz or like a Foles, like an MVP caliber type quarterback, you're going to have to go with a game manager that's going to play dink and dunk.
But Andrew, how does Peterson sell that to the team if Wentz doesn't come back in 2018 at all, and you traded Foles and you're going with Sudfeld? You're talking about all these guys. I would hate that. Obviously, he's not going to come out and say we're kind of punting the season, but it seems that way.
Well, I mean, that's a situation where the coach has to remind his guys that they're professionals and they have to worry about their positions. They have to worry about their job. And, you let us handle the quarterback situation and you let us handle that. And, you just have to instill in your guys that they can believe in Sudfeld. And, you have to put him in certain positions to be successful. And when he is successful, you have to accentuate that to your team and let them know that he was successful in those situations, and hopefully the confidence builds from there.
Yeah, they're kind of in an interesting scenario. I mean, there's 3 guys on the team, with Doug Peterson. What's he going to do? Because we don't know the status of Wentz. I understand a lot of people are coming out saying keep Foles. I just think I can't imagine, unless he goes runner perfect, that his stock is any higher at this point. And if somebody comes to me knocking on my door, Arizona at 15, and says, hey, we want Nick Foles, or Cincinnati at 12, or Buffalo at 22, or even, God forbid, the Patriots at 31. We've talked about that on Sunday. If the Patriots were willing to try to put their cupboard back together as far as backup quarterback, I can't imagine Bill Belichick doing that. I'm just saying stranger things have happened. He's in a situation where, I don't know, that's a tough situation. I say you trade him for as much as you can get for him when you can, and you kind of deal with the season as it comes, and we'll see. Who knows? Wentz may try to play week 1 if he believes it's only an 8 month. I mean, he was taking reps during Super Bowl practice week.
Right. That's to come back from that kind of an injury, to try to play at that high of a level. If he's coming back for the preseason, that's 9 months into the injury. That's between 8 and 14 months. That seems like such a stretch to me. I can't imagine a scenario where he's ready at the beginning of the year. Even if in his head he feels like he's ready, I don't think the team's going to rush him back because he's too important. If he comes in too early and he hasn't fully healed, and then all of a sudden he gets hit and he's out again, I mean, you've just ruined that kid. You've ruined your season, and it's just that to me seems like the disaster.
I think they're definitely going to be careful with Wentz. I mean, in my opinion, the kid's the future. I mean, he definitely has more tangibles than Foles will ever have, even though Foles is a quality quarterback. I mean, we saw that Sunday. But I think, Wentz, I think that's a situation where they're going to take their time. And then as far as training Foles or going with Sudfeld, I guess we just have to wait and see.
Well, the question is that if they trade Foles, will Carson Wentz subconsciously try to rush himself back?
Well, he will, because that's what athletes do. But there are people in higher positions that are going to say no.
Well, right, but if he knows Foles is there and he knows that the job's pretty much Wentz's when he comes back, I understand the situation with not trying to rush, but that's another thing. I mean, you trade Foles, now you're almost, you have to wonder, if I trade Foles, are we going to try to rush Carson back, at what risk? I think the Super Bowl bought him a buffer year. It doesn't anybody's. No coach. I can't think of a coach right now just looking at it in the NFL that won the Super Bowl and got fired the next year.
Right.
So I think Doug Peterson's bought himself a buffer year.
Well, and you've got an entire city who are now the monkeys off their back, and they're going to probably listen to anything this Peterson guy does now because he's a god in their eyes at this point. So just let the guy steer the ship and let them make the best decisions. And the city. Well, geez, we're talking about the Eagles fans, so I don't know.
They're a different breed.
And that's exactly the point I was just about to make. He's definitely bought himself a year or more with ownership.
Right.
But I don't know that he's bought himself that year with the fans, because now that he's done it once, now that the fans have a taste for it, I don't know that they're going to let him off the hook. If Foles stinks, Wentz is hurt, and Sudfeld is garbage, and they go
6-10.
Yeah, 6-10, or even 8-8.
Yeah.
Especially not if they're losing division games, then those fans aren't going to let Peterson off easily.
No, they'll be throwing snowballs at him too.
I mean, well, let's look at the teams they got to play next year. So you got at home, they've got Dallas, Washington, New York, obviously. They got Carolina, Atlanta, Houston, Indianapolis, and Minnesota. You're talking about, what are you talking about, 4 playoff teams out of 5, and Houston with Deshaun Watson coming back. Plus, obviously, the division's always competitive. On the road, you've got New Orleans, who's another playoff team, Jacksonville, a playoff team, Tennessee, and Los Angeles. So, I mean, that's a tough schedule.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule.
So, I mean, you got Tampa Bay smattered in there. We don't know what they'll be. It's Jameis's kind of final, dance around the hat.
He has to be good, right? Like,
I've been saying that for 4 years, man.
Yeah, why I don't get that guy. I really don't.
Dude, I've been, nobody roots harder for him than I do, and he just, I'm done with him at this point. I mean, I don't think he's
got, Winston's got talent. He just does not always make the right decision. He's getting pulled down by 2 defensive linemen, and he chucks one up in the end zone. I mean, that's Jameis Winston in a nutshell. But then again, if he gets protection one week, he looks like Tom Brady.
It's fair. I mean, it's what do we? He's got one more year. You're right. Week to week, he seems to regress and progress. It's an amazing display. To watch him week to week is. I'm glad I don't have any hair to pull out.
You guys ought to hear the radio programs around here talk about him. I mean, I'm 20 miles from Tampa.
Yeah,
and they, they're on the fence with him at this point. They don't know, especially well. You all remember the shot of him trying to fire his team up and eating the
W's.
fingers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but if I'm a player on that team, what are you thinking? I'm going to go to battle with this guy? I don't know. I'm like you, man. I don't know what to think about this guy from week to week. You never know what you're going to get.
Spike just remembered the visual of.
I completely forgot about the eating the W's thing. I've been laughing.
Eating the W, the fingers, man.
God.
They talked about that for 3 weeks on the radio around here.
The best part is they kind of look like crab legs too at the same time. And Jameis and the crab legs.
Finally got us crab legs.
I know. So, all right. Well, let's look at the flavor of the day right now. And obviously, my favorite tweet that I saw yesterday was. The picture of the banner hanging in Lucas Oil Stadium of Josh McDaniels, head coach, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Because you know how they like to put – it was a play on the AFC participant or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't – to me, it just – I don't know. McDaniels never seemed real, gung-ho about this job. To me, your dad loves conspiracy theories. To me, this was just Robert Kraft just pulling the old "fuck you" to Jim Irsay. Hey, look, yeah, go ahead, interview Josh McDaniels. Oh no, we're good.
Well, that's the thing. Like, think about how pissed off Jim Irsay is going to be when he wakes up in 4 or 5 days from his drug-induced coma.
What, we didn't get Josh? Damn it.
Yeah. No, I mean, no. And that's the thing. The conspiracy theory right now is that this is all about Deflategate. This is Robert Kraft pulling the strings, saying you can't have him because of this, that, and the other thing. And, for the Colts, not only did they think that they had the coach, but they also stopped interviewing other people. Mm-hmm. So now that all of the, top-tier candidates are gone, where do they go from here? I know that they obviously there are other names out there. There are people that they're going to be able to look at, but they're not getting their first choice, so that's got to be a slap in the face.
Sure. I mean, anytime you don't get your first choice, it's kind of like okay, now we go to those other people, and they know
that they're not the first choice.
Right. And it's just part of the job at this point. But the way I look at it is basically, let's there's 2 big topics I kind of want to, touch on this topic. Okay, like 2 big subtopics, I guess. And Andrew, I'll start with you. Josh McDaniels, obviously we know about the tenure in Denver with Tebow, et cetera, and his time, and it didn't really end well. And then now we have this situation where he kind of did the okey doke with Indianapolis.
Right.
Is he kind of unhireable at this point?
He's never going to have a head coaching position in the NFL again, unless it's the Browns.
And see, now Spike, that's where I look at this situation. He had to know that going in if he pulled the okey doke, and kind of. So I look at it now. We're talking about Belichick. He's 65, going to be 66. Is this the way I see it? Is kind of a coach in waiting.
Yeah, and that's got to be it. I agree to a certain extent that he'll never have another head coaching job in the NFL again. At least he won't going from New England offensive coordinator to head coach somewhere else. It's either going to be he's the head coach in New England after Belichick retires, which is not something they can necessarily promise because of the Rooney Rule, but they can groom him. And apparently that was part of the deal that they used to sweeten the pot to get him.
They would still have to satisfy the Rooney Rule, but there's ways around that.
Oh, yeah, no, I know there is, but
I mean, we already talked about the Raiders violating the Rooney Rule, and I mean, there's been no fines.
Oh no, they cleared them.
They clearly violated it.
Yeah, but the league cleared the Raiders of the Rooney Rule when it came to hiring Gruden.
Right, but come on, let's call it what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean it's garbage, but you know that the Raiders are going to get treated differently than the Patriots. Everybody's going to get treated differently than the Patriots when it comes to any
and they'll satisfy
anything like that. But,
you know, Robert Kraft's not an idiot. He knows that Goodell's going to be on a microscope when it comes time to find a new coach.
But the flip side of that is while Belichick is there, and this is how they sweeten the pot for McDaniels, is that Belichick and McDaniels are going to sit down and not just go over offensive strategies. They're going to go over cap space strategies. They're going to go after draft strategy. They're going to go after the behind.
He will have a lot more to say.
So now he's going to be able to not only get to see how all this stuff works, but have a lot more say in New England. So I think that was, a good chunk of the reason why he's staying. Now, for him to go and take that knowledge and try to apply it somewhere else, if another team won't let him do that as the head coach right out of New England, I don't think anybody would be surprised. But if, they go another 3 years with this team together, and it's Belichick and Brady and Josh McDaniels leading the way, and they get 2 more Super Bowl appearances out of this crew, and they go another, 2 or 3 years with New England's offense as the number 1 offense in the league. I mean, how do you turn him away after that?
No, there's no way he's going to be turned away if that's the situation. But, Spike, you touched on it, Andrew, I'll flip this to you. He has a rare opportunity at this point to do something no other head coach would ever have the opportunity to do, and that's to build your team 3 to 5 years out from when you actually take a head coaching position. He took the head coaching position in Indianapolis. He's building his team from day one to have to compete.
Right.
Now, he's building a team from year 1 to be his in 3 to 5 years.
Right. And that I should have, when I did make the statement, he'll never be a head coach in the NFL ever, I should have added the prepositional phrase outside of Massachusetts, because
we knew where you were going. Obviously, we knew where you're going.
Yeah, obviously this is what they're probably doing, is to groom him. And of course, I mean, what coach wouldn't want to be able to work with the guys you're going to be having in 3 to 5 years? So but how do you do that though? I mean, how do you tell an NFL franchise that you're going to be their coach and tell your assistant coaches, and then all of a sudden just say no, and then save face and have a decent reputation around the league?
Well, this is one of the conspiracy theories that my father had either heard or thought up on his own, is that this wasn't necessarily Josh McDaniels thinking about his future in Indianapolis or his future in New England and moving his family around. His thought is that McDaniels met with Andrew Luck and has no confidence that Andrew Luck is going to be able to come back from injury, and doesn't think that he's going to have. This is the theory.
We like to talk conspiracy theory.
Yeah, no, I love it. But I mean, that's the theory, and it makes a little bit of sense if you think about it. Like, if Josh McDaniels, or if any coach is going to that team, they think that they are going to have Andrew Luck as the core of that team and then build around him. If Andrew Luck isn't there, this team is even worse than what we've seen in the last year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though he worked with Jacoby Brissett, I can't imagine he's wildly confident in taking Jacoby Brissett and making him his starting quarterback.
No, you can't be.
So I look at this situation. All right, so we've got, let's just say hypothetically, 3 years, good years left of Belichick and Brady. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know. At what point do you think McDaniels starts to look into the draft and say, here's my guy?
I don't know if it's a number of years or if it's the guy.
Well, I think you've got to have an Aaron Rodgers kind of situation where you've got to, I think, again, I've been saying this for, 4 or 5 months now. I love Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
I think drafting him 2018 sitting him for 3 years, a la Aaron Rodgers, and making him into exactly what you want with Josh McDaniels. I mean, if we're talking about anybody who can, make an offense, it's Josh McDaniels, and build it around a certain player. All I hear from everybody who doesn't follow Patriots football, system. Well, this is Josh McDaniels' system. So you got to get your guy that's going to be your system quarterback. Is it now? Maybe. I like Baker Mayfield, so I'm a little biased. But is it maybe 2 years down the line? I don't know who's coming out down the pipeline. At some point in time, Brady's not going to play forever. He says 45, great. We can all rah-rah to that. And if he plays at an elite level till 43, I think that's a realistic possibility. But, we saw his mortality this year. And if they don't improve the offensive line, he's going to continue to get beat up. Mm-hmm. So his shelf life is shrinking, week by week. I think at some point, this is a perfect scenario for Josh McDaniels. At some point in the next 3 years, he's going to say, all right, that's my guy.
Right, and that's the thing, and that's kind of the point I was getting at, is that if he does like somebody like a Baker Mayfield, that he's going to go with them. I don't think it's necessarily we want to groom a quarterback, whoever it may be, for a set number of years. It's going to be who's
haven't we
the right
seen
guy.
that? Haven't we seen that over the last decade? I mean, we've seen Ryan Mallett, we've seen Brian Hoyer, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo. We've seen the heir apparent for the last decade of Tom Brady, and he keeps shattering expectations. I think this is a more realistic 43 years old. It may not be Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker Mayfield may, if Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick go to interview Baker Mayfield and say, hey, look, if you come to New England, there's a chance you don't see a field for 3 years, and he's like, I'm not down with that. Then you got to, he's not your guy. But he also may not be there at 31. But at some point in the next 3 years, I look at it this way: is Josh McDaniels is in like one of the, if this is the situation, if he's the coach in waiting, he is in one of the most perfect spots that he could never get from Indianapolis or any other team. He gets a chance to build a roster so that when he steps into the head coach day one, he's got his guys. He's not marred by salary cap problems. He steps over in Indianapolis, Andrew, and he doesn't have anything that he wants. I mean, I can't speak for every single player on that team, but he has no Andrew Luck possibility. He's got a terrible team. He's got no running game. Frank Gore's a million years old. His defense is no good. The only thing he's got is Adam Vinatieri at this point. So you're looking at, hey, can I hang out with my family? Josh McDaniels is what, Spike, 40?
40, 41, something like that.
Okay, so he's somewhere around Tom Brady's age. If he says, hey, look, I can leave my family, let my family continue to grow up in Massachusetts, and, I'm the coach in 3 to 5 years, and I've got exactly what I want. I mean, there's no reason that he can't hit the ground running year one and continue the success of Patriots football.
Well, when you look at Patriots football, obviously we look at Belichick, we look at Brady, and it just seems like it was a perfect match. And you don't see that a lot in sports. You don't see that perfect match. If Belichick were to go to another franchise, who's to say he'd be successful there? He's a great coach. But there was that perfect match. I think, again, as a Cowboy fan, I think back at Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson had that perfect situation where he won 3 or 4 Super Bowls in 4 years, and then he went on to Miami, and he didn't do anything. You have Dick in Chicago. He went on to the Saints and didn't do anything. There's that perfect match that Belichick and Brady had. Right. And there's nothing to say when McDaniels becomes the coach, if he does, that's going to continue. It was just that, I don't know how to explain it. It was just that perfect match that you very rarely see in sports between Belichick and Brady. And once Brady's gone, I really think that.
But don't you think McDaniels has a chance to do exactly that? Find his perfect match either in the draft or a young quarterback who doesn't get re-signed? I mean, I think that... Well,
he has a chance to find that perfect match, but what is it? I mean, you don't know. I mean,
he won with Tebow. I'm not saying... No. I know that's a very bad example, but I'm saying he won games with Tebow.
Tebow had... I'm not going to go there.
Tebow's not a good quarterback. We've had this discussion 100 times. Tebow's not a good... What I'm saying is he won with Tebow. So if you get a guy like Baker Mayfield or... I know these guys aren't available at 31, but Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen even. If Josh Allen slips, everybody loves Josh Allen. If he decides to slip down to 31, do you take a shot at with him? Say, look, you're not seeing the field for 3-4 years. He's the perfect candidate in my mind. I like Josh Allen, but I think he's not ready. He didn't face defenses, in my opinion, that are worthy of being an NFL quarterback. But he's the perfect.
Think about this for a second, Spike. Think about this. If McDaniels sticks around and becomes a new head coach in New England, think about the shadow. Think about the shoes that he needs to fill.
He's aware of that.
You know,
he's aware of that.
Yeah, what's that? What is that going to? How is that going to affect?
But think about the comfort factor. He went to Denver, out of his element, took a job when he was probably too young for it, and I would say, for all intents and purposes, with the exception of the last 6 weeks of his job, he didn't do too bad. Things kind of went south with the owner, and he was fired. And okay, so he learns from that. He's now in a situation where, Spike, help me out here. How long has he been the coordinator with his 2 stops in New England? Close to a decade?
Total, yeah. It's got to be... God, it might even be longer than that.
Okay, so let's just say somewhere around 10 years. You're talking about
this stretch is 6 years. I know that much.
So you're talking about a comfort factor that he's been with this team for his adult life in the NFL. So now he's taking over this team. I understand the shadow of Bill Belichick and the expectations, but to sit there for the better part of, if we say he goes in 3 years, to sit there for the better part of 14-plus years learning from Bill Belichick. And I get it. Greatness doesn't just, we've seen Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weiss, the list goes on and on of the Belichick coaching tree that hasn't been successful. But like you said, Robert Kraft is a different kind of owner. He is the kind of owner that will basically help you in any way possible to get everything you need. And I don't think Bill Belichick, just because he retires, will essentially not have a fingerprint on this team, even when he's not the actual head coach.
Well, I think that's a fair point, and learning from Belichick is obviously going to be the way to do it. The thought popped into my mind, if in 3 years' time, if Belichick is still there, does Josh McDaniels try to get a head coaching job in the XFL to prove that he is worthy of coaching in this league again?
As long as he doesn't take a knee, right? No, but in all seriousness, I think the new wave of coaching is take a guy like McDaniels, McVay, the quarterback guy, Doug Peterson, perfect example. Take this guy, get yourself a quarterback that you can build a relationship with, make him great, run a great offensive scheme, get yourself, I don't know who else is out there, but the first person that comes to mind is Wade Phillips for LA. Get yourself an experienced defensive coordinator to be there. I'm sure Bill will find somebody that'll still stick on with McDaniels. Get yourself an experience so you don't even have to think about that side of the ball. That's the thing. If a head coach has to think about both sides of the ball, he almost splits his abilities in two. We're talking about Josh McDaniels. He's an offensive guy.
And I think this is where you're making the same mistake that a lot of coaches make, is that you're only looking at 2 sides of the ball. Belichick would look at 3 because he's going to hammer special teams as well.
That's fine. And
so,
you know what? Find a great special
right,
teams.
But that's something that you need to consider as well.
I'm not discounting special teams. What I'm saying is the 2 main factors, yes, the intangibles. Bill Belichick looked at all sides of a game. And don't get me wrong. And I would imagine if McDaniels has sat here for the better part of 15 years, he would learn those exact things. I think in this stage of his life, he's a little more humble. He went out, he got his little surefire shot with Denver, it flamed out. I think he's a little more humble if he takes this job. And again, we don't even know. This is all speculation. He may not be the coach in waiting. But I'd imagine the reason he did not go to Indianapolis is because there was a backdoor deal.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure that there's some kind of handshake deal that says when the job becomes available, if they don't promise it to him, they'll promise he's on the short list and he can interview, and who else is going to have the experience.
If he continues the success.
Yeah, and the learning from Belichick and all that, he is going to be the guy. So, yeah, I'm sure it was, but it's just such an interesting scenario to see, a guy burn another franchise like that, and apparently burned the coaches that he had wanted to hire as well.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, guys left other jobs thinking that they were going to be on McDaniels' staff, and then McDaniels didn't even call them to say, forget it, I'm staying in New England.
I heard about the quarterback's coach, or the QB guy for New England.
Right, but he's staying with New England.
Right.
But there were other guys where McDaniels had said, we're going to Indianapolis, and now all of a sudden they don't know if they're going to have a job next year.
Wow, I did not hear about that. That's an interesting take. I wonder if... we'll have to see the dominoes fall on that one. Tony
Dungy tweeted today, I can tell you there is no excuse big enough to justify this. it's one thing to go back on your word to an organization, but having assistant coaches leave jobs to go with you, then leave them out to dry is indefensible.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's so dungy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and he's right about that. That's a just kind of a dick move. Now the flip side of that is Reggie Wayne stepped in and said, "How dare you burn a franchise like this," or something like that. This is a guy who New England paid $5 million for 2 days worth of training camp because he couldn't hack it in New England's offensive scheme. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, we'll see how
Dungy?
No, Reggie Wayne.
Reggie Wayne said that.
Reggie Wayne.
Yeah. The guy, I mean, granted he was past his prime by about a decade and a half.
He took a full $5 million to do that?
He took $5 million in guaranteed money, lasted 2 days, and then had to quit training camp because he couldn't handle New England's offense. He was either too dumb to learn the schemes or he was too slow to be able to run the routes, but whatever it was, we're better off without him.
Interesting. We'll have to see how the McDaniels dominoes fall on this one, because obviously I don't think we're done with, any of these situations we've talked about in the first hour and 15 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
Let's talk puck. And there's a couple of situations going on right now. Obviously, trade deadline is coming, pretty close in the NHL. And I know that you're with your Las Vegas Thunder jersey on. You're ready to talk some hockey. Apparently, I didn't see this, but he's been playing for a little bit. Mike Fisher came back out of retirement.
Yep.
I'm late to that party. But, Carrie Underwood's husband, I guess, got bored with listening to her nag. So he's like, I got to play some hockey again.
Yeah, well, he was probably cramping her style. If she's home all day and now all of us, she can't watch her daytime
How am I going to watch
stories
soap
on the
operas, eat
soaps?
Cheetos, and get fat, right? I mean, it seems like the perfect scenario. If he didn't really feel like, he was, able to put in a full season, but Nashville's basically a Stanley Cup contender at this point. I mean, I think it's perfect for him, right? Does he get the C back?
Oh, that I don't know. I'd have to.
Do they have a captain right now? I have to look at the captains. But
we'd have to check that out because I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, no, he's been back for a little bit.
Looks like Roman Yossi's got the C right now. I can't imagine them giving Mike the captaincy back at that point. But where does that put Nashville at this point? I mean, obviously he hasn't played for half a season, but I mean he still was pretty competitive. Obviously last year he was, a great contributor, and this year I have to look at his stats this year. What's he been doing this year as far as contributing?
I thought I had it up, but the site doesn't have it. Hang on.
You suck.
I'm not part of the crack research staff.
You're the on-crack research staff.
I'm filling in while the rest of the staff is looking at, I don't even know what she was looking at. Offer Up a minute ago. So
our crack research staff is looking to sell all of our equipment in the middle of the night.
That's probably not a bad idea.
We're gonna come back to the studio and be like, "Hey, there's a microphone amplifier with no microphones." Let's see. So we've got. He's played what? No, they don't even have his 2018 stats. God damn it! All right. Well, let's chat about it. Mike Fisher coming back. Nashville's already been a Stanley Cup competitor. They got Kyle Turris. Spike, where does this put them on the scheme? I mean, do you think that he's enough of a boost for them to say they are the favorites in the West?
Oh God, no. No, he's too old for that. He's as competitive as he has been and as good as he has been even the last couple of years. If he wasn't planning on playing this year, he's coming in out of shape. He's coming in maybe not knowing some of the new players, new faces around. He's coming in without the C, so that's going to be an adjustment for him. Plus, he's coming into a conference where not only Vegas is kicking ass, but you got to look at St. Louis, you got to look at Winnipeg, even San Jose. They're way behind Vegas in the Pacific, but that's a team that you're always going to have to contend with. I don't think Nashville is going to be. They're not going to be the Western Conference representative in the Stanley Cup Finals. I know that much.
Is that because you're biased?
I am completely biased, 100%. I have no problem admitting that. But no, I just this year especially, there's just too much competition. Nashville's been figured out; they've been exposed, and I don't know. I don't see it.
Okay, I was wrong. I thought he had been playing a while. He's actually just been working out, and he's set to basically start with the team just before the trade deadline because that's when postseason rosters have to be set. I don't know. I mean, I kind of like him as a little bit of a breath of fresh air for them. You're right. I don't know if this necessarily makes them the favorites, but I mean, when they came out of the West as the 8th seed last year, I don't think they were the favorites either. I think he brings stability. I think he brings, like you got a guy like Kyle Turris who has not, other than last year, doesn't really have a lot of postseason experience. He's a good quality candidate for, kind of leading this team. I don't know what Roman Yossi's ability will be to be the C. He's only been, the C for a year. Now to have a team with 2 captains on it, I understand that I'm sure Mike Fisher would cede, a lot of the big speeches, et cetera, to Roman Yossi. But I don't know. I kind of think that a lot of teams underestimate the ability to have 2 guys who basically can steer the ship together. Because Mike Fisher has always been a quality captain in this league.
No, he definitely has. The bigger problem that you're going to face isn't necessarily internal. It's external. That division's just too tough. I know that they're hanging in there right now.
Right.
They're second in the Central behind Winnipeg, but they're only a couple of points above St. Louis, and then you got to worry about Dallas and Minnesota crawling up from behind. Even Colorado has shown flashes of brilliance this year, even though they were supposed to be absolute garbage.
Right.
And then, you look at the rest of the Western Conference with Vegas, San Jose, Calgary, even Anaheim. If Anaheim can get healthy, that's a dangerous goddamn team. That's one that everybody's going to have.
Well, they're pretty healthy with the exception of Ryan Getzlaf at this point, right?
Right, but
and they're back. I mean,
they've never had the full, the band together for this entire year, I think, except maybe like the first week.
Right, and that's the thing is Anaheim. Anaheim's always a tough team. Randy Carlyle knows how to coach these guys through injuries. They're like the Spurs to me. Kessler's old, Getzlaf's old, Perry's old. They're all still competitive and contribute, but they have to navigate the ups and downs of an 82-game season, and sometimes that becomes injuries. But yeah, you never count out the Ducks. I mean, the 8 teams I'm looking at as far as making the playoffs at this point, I mean, the Flames are like the weakest, and they're not a bad team.
Right, and that's sort of playing to the strength of the West this year. It's just, that the Central is unbelievable this year. The Pacific, even though Vegas looks like they're running away with it, the rest of the teams, especially the ones fighting for the next couple of spots, they're all neck and neck. So, I mean, this is going to be a bloodbath by the time March and April roll around.
I mean, can you see the situation? I mean, the Ducks are 62 points, and they're out of the playoffs at this point.
You got to look at Carl. I mean, Gallant's going to get the Jack Adams Award.
He's already got it locked up.
But if the Ducks make the playoffs, you have to look at Carlisle as probably number 3 behind Cassidy.
Behind Cassidy.
Really? Yeah. Well, with the way the Boston's been playing, with all the rookies playing so well, I mean, who else do you give it to? Like Paul Maurice or
Paul Maurice of the Jets?
Yeah, or what's his nuts in New Jersey?
Cooper. There's a lot of good candidates out there. I think if it's Gallant's wrapped up, there's no playing for second in the Jack Adams. I don't think you do that.
You could. This is like I'm making a basketball reference here in a second, so hang on to your butts. But this is like the old All-Star Game competitions with Larry Bird during the 3-point shot competition. He would just turn to the rest of the field and say, "Which one of you is coming in second?"
Who's coming in second? Right.
Well, you talked about the Avalanche and how well they've been playing. Problem is now they've kind of lost McKinnon for a better part of a month now. I mean, are we pretty much ready to write them off without their best player?
I mean, it's easy to do that, but I still think that now that they know that they can win, even without McKinnon, I think they're still going to find ways to get a couple of games here and there.
I mean, they're 4 points out of the final wild card spot. The problem is that they take a giant step back without Nathan McKinnon.
Absolutely, but they're still 19-7-1 at home. So, this is a team that can play well. They have the ability to win. I think they can find that way to play well without McKinnon.
I just don't know if it's enough. How do you take 24 goals out of the lineup and really expect, with the small bit of talent they have around him, Landeskog, what's his face, Andrighetto and guys like that? I don't know. You talk about the Central being so great. Losing a player of McKinnon's status has got to be, I don't know, to me it seems like a dagger. We could find out, but, I mean, to me it seems like a big dagger for them. But, I mean, they're already exceeding expectations.
Yeah, Well, I've been dominating this part of the show a little too long, so if you want to... Yeah, Andrew, if you want to... I don't know how much you actually follow hockey, but...
I follow it some to win some money in daily fantasy sports on DraftKings.
There you go. Yeah, that's something we got to talk about, is daily fantasy not being allowed in Nevada, which is the stupidest fucking thing in the world to me. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it sucks. I know there's a lot of guys that I correspond with that live in Vegas actually and can't play it.
I was crushing it.
But going back to the McKinnon situation, I mean, this is a situation where the team's got to, it's when you lose one of your best players, you look around and you say, you know what, we've got to step up our game. And are they going to do it or aren't they going to do it? I mean, it's as simple as that. And, we've seen it many, many times with some of the legendary teams where they've lost their best player or maybe their second or third best player in the middle of the season. And they've, just kind of looked at each other and said, well, we've got to do this. We've done it. But, in their situation being sixth in that conference, and man, I'm looking at the standings and you're right. It's just all bunched together. Winnipeg has 73 points, Nashville 72, Blues 67, Stars 66, Minnesota 63, and Colorado 62. It's going to be tough for them in that conference to do that. But I want to go all the way back to what you guys started the conversation with Mike Fisher. And when I did a search on Mike Fisher, I saw two stories. The first story said that Carrie Underwood and Mike Fisher are working on their next child. And then right after that, Mike Fisher is going back to hockey. So I don't know what that means.
That's a smart man right there.
I don't know what that means, but that's funny.
All right, well, let's talk about, with the Olympics starting, Jagr kind of came out and said he has no interest in playing for Czech Republic. I would imagine for all intents and purposes, Jagr's career at this point is pretty much over. And it kind of seems really kind of shitty that he didn't get that farewell tour. But, what are your thoughts immediately, and instantly when you think of Jaromir Jagr?
If you want my answer, he's the reason the Bruins lost the 2013 Stanley Cup. Him being on that line with Marchand and Bergeron, he was too slow to keep up. He was a defensive liability at that point, and he just, I was hoping that the Bruins were going to get Jerome Iginla during that trading deadline. Instead, they got Jagr.
They got a
40-year-old Jaromir Jagr, and they were like, "This is the guy that's taking us to the promised land." It's like you got a little bit out of Mark Recchi at the end of his career in 2011, but I mean, come the fuck on with Jagr. No, I appreciate that he's super popular. He loves the game. The fans love him and everything else. I've never been a fan of his. Just haven't.
What was the name of that crew that always wears the mullets with him? Jagr's?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, no, I know exactly. They show up, and there's enough of them to have each one in a different jersey of the teams that he's played for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we get the crack research staff to find out the name of his traveling groupies.
What'd you do with your phone?
Battery's dead.
Oh, shocker.
Oh, my God. She's falling down on the job.
Oh, no, the crack research staff forgot to put the charger in.
Oh, my computer's over there, though.
What are your thoughts, Andrew, on Jaromir Jagr over the course of, 6 years at this point? 27 years?
I just started following hockey within the last 4 or 5 years because, like I said, because of DraftKings and moving to Tampa. Hockey is big here, obviously, because we've got the best team in the whole league. But anyway.
Wow! All right, I like it. Talking shit, I appreciate that.
When I started, researching the players and stuff, Jagr's obviously had a great career. I knew him. I got to know him a little more because he played for Florida here for 3 years too, the Panthers. But looking at his career, he's won pretty much every award you could win. He's won the MVP. He's won the outstanding player given by actually voted on by the players. He's won the most points in a season, I think 5 or 6 times. He's won the character trophy, Spike. So I don't know how you can't like that. But
who gives a fuck about Lady Bing? Jesus.
I do, man. I'm a teacher.
All right, I'll give you that.
But I haven't followed it as closely as you guys. So, as far as the in-game situations that he's been a part of. And the interesting thing is I look at his career and I see a lot of different teams. And whenever you see a guy that's been on a lot of different teams, it makes you scratch your head. He played for Pitt for all those years. And then, he went to Washington for 3, then the Rangers for 4, and then Philly, and then Dallas, and Boston, and New Jersey. I mean, why bouncing from team to team so much is my question.
He was, the later parts of his career, he was just kind of an average player. What do you call it? How long did he go and play in the Czech Republic when he took that hiatus? I have to look at it.
I had that earlier.
When he played for Omsk, 2008 to 2011. So after he came back from that, a lot of people thought his career was basically over. So he did a lot of jumping. He was on a lot of one-year deals. I know the big, what do you call it, the big conspiracy theory out there is he owed a lot of money to a lot of people, and that's why his career extended so as long as it did. Yeah. He had a lot of gambling debts to pay off, so that's why his career was longer than probably it should have been. But, I mean, even last year in Florida, he was still a contributor. I mean, so it wasn't anything that he...
46 points and 66 the year before.
Yeah, I mean, he nothing really... It's a shame he couldn't... I just think it's a shame he couldn't get his send-off, really, in the NHL. I thought, he signing with Calgary, I know his initial thought was... I can go to a competitor, they're a team on the rise, and maybe I can give them something. I really kind of wish now he would have stayed with maybe Florida or gone to Arizona, of all places, and had a nice little send-off. Because I think at this point, he realizes he's done.
Yeah. Oh, he's got to be. I mean, he 7 points in 22 games this year. I mean, that's just never going to be good enough. So I don't blame that experiment for ending. Like, that seems like... Jagr should have known to hang it up last year, even though he put up a good number of points for a Florida team that was never going anywhere. That's he needed to know better than to try to extend the career in the NHL. And good on him for going back to the Czech Republic or going to wherever he's going. I'm actually surprised he's not going for the KHL because I think he can probably make more money there.
You're right. He probably could make more money. Could he compete? That's the question. Or does it even matter?
Maybe. I mean, it's a bigger ice surface, which is why a lot of those guys have a little bit of trouble adjusting to the NHL, which is what we saw in Shipachyov. But
Vadim Shipachyov. We hardly knew he.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. I'm going to read this to you. It says, although he has repeatedly denied that he has a gambling problem, in 2003 he admitted that he settled debts totaling $950,000 with 2 internet gambling sites between 1998 and 2002. Oh, there's more. The first of the incidents centered on Belize-based website Caribbean Sports and its owner William Caesar, no relation, to which Jagr owed excess of $500,000. SI also reported that he agreed to make monthly payments to Caesar to settle the debt, which turned out he stopped making payments 2 months after that agreement. In 2003, the Internal Revenue Service filed a $4.27 million lien against him for unpaid taxes in the 2001 fiscal tax year. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say these are the reasons his career went longer than it should have.
That makes a lot of sense then.
So, anyways, let's talk about another guy whose career has gone on probably far longer than it should, but he's almost become a cult icon at this point, Andrew, and that's your boy Bartolo Colon. He's back in the baseball spectrum.
He signed with Texas.
Signed a minor league deal with the Texas Rangers with an invite to spring training. Is this just a ticket seller, or do you really think he has an actual shot to make the Rangers roster?
I don't see how he makes the team. He's done. In the DFS world last year, every time he took the mound, he was one we targeted with our hitters because, he's done. I think his ERA with the Twins was well over 5. I don't know. I think it's just a situation where he's trying to hang on. Texas is maybe looking for a guy who can throw 150 to 170 innings to give them the bullpen some rest. He may crack the rotation and pitch 5 in the 5th spot, especially if they're not able to sign Darvish.
Right.
So they're probably looking at him as a possibility just to eat some innings because he's not going to be a playoff caliber type guy. In fact, if they make the playoffs, he probably won't even be on the roster when they play in October.
Do you see a scenario where he doesn't make the roster as a starter, but maybe as a long reliever, just a guy to eat innings in those big blowout type games?
I mean, he could be a long reliever type guy.
Is that an assignment he would agree to?
I'm pretty sure
I think at this point in his career, sure. Yeah, at this point in his career, he's probably just looking for a position, just to continue to lengthen his career.
Kind of felt like Texas did that with what's his name, by signing Doug Fister. I kind of thought that was, their guy in the system who's going to take the 4 or 5 spot. Not Bartolo Colon.
Yeah, Fister's obviously an upgrade from Bartolo.
Fister kind of had a little bit of a resurgence at the end of the last season with Boston. I'm looking at their starting rotation. Like you said, if they don't get Darvish, we're looking at Cole Hamels, Matt Moore, Fister, Mike Minor, and then they're penciling him in at this point to be the 5th starter. So, if you can get
Bartolo.
Yeah, talk to me about how the contracts work. If he signs a minor league deal and makes the major league roster, do they have to rework a contract, or does he get paid whatever the league minimum is for a guy of his age?
I believe he gets paid the league minimum at this point if he signs a minor league deal and then makes the team. I don't think he gets anything more than that.
So as a 5th starter, making a league minimum, if you're right, if he can give 150 to 175 innings, I think Texas Rangers would love that.
Sure.
So,
and those top 3 right there, that's not bad. Hamels, Moore, and Fister is not a bad 1, 2, 3.
Now, if they do sign Darvish, do you think that bumps Bartolo Colon out of there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what they're probably banking on when they sign, Colon to a minor league deal is, Darvish is still a free agent. Nobody's signed him. And if they don't get Darvish back,
is there any reason to believe that Texas is the front runner for Darvish, though?
Do what?
Is there any reason to believe that Texas is the front runner for Darvish?
No, not at all. I haven't seen anything that says that.
So this seems like a pretty good sign. Bartolo Colon's another guy. He's 44 years old. He's been around. Was he pitching in '98 when the Indians lost the World Series to the Marlins?
Yeah, that was his 2nd year in the league.
That's 97.
Yeah. 97. Yeah, 97, sorry.
97 he was a rookie, yeah.
He was a rookie. Holy cow. Big sexy. So he's been with Cleveland, Montreal, Chicago White Sox, Anaheim Angels, Red Sox, Yankees, Athletics, Mets, Braves, Twins, and now the Rangers. Holy crap. Some guys just don't go. If you're competitive, you've been doing this your whole life. I guess if he's still competitive to make an MLB roster, more power to him.
I would rather see him in the National League just because I would love to see him take a couple more at bats because they are the goofiest fucking things on the planet.
Yeah, he finally got his home run, so maybe he's going to hit a few more. Maybe that's why Texas signed him too when they play there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, Bartolo Colon is a DH. Maybe they don't even want him as a pitcher.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh,
I saw today that Carlos. Speaking of that, I saw today that Carlos Zambrano is possibly mulling a return to the big leagues as a DH. Remember him, Zambrano, for the Cubs?
Yeah, he can mull all he wants. That's a
he could freaking plug it as a pitcher.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to take on that for lack of a better word, attitude, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a guy who actually probably will have a better impact, and Todd Frazier signs with the Mets. What does that, Andrew, effectively mean for David Wright at this point?
Say that again? I didn't hear you.
What does Todd Frazier signing with the Mets mean for David Wright?
Well, David Wright's done. I mean, his back is shredded. And obviously the signing shows that the Mets have given up with Wright unless they decide to maybe try him out at first base. But every time Wright tries to get out there, he's on the DL within 10 or 15 days. And when you have a back issue in baseball, that's pretty much a career ender. And I think this signing of Frazier just shows you that Wright's probably done.
Truth be told, I didn't even know David Wright was still in the league. I didn't know he was under contract with anyone. I didn't know he was part of a team. So
he's a real boy.
Yeah, no, I understand he's not Pinocchio, but he's been out so often. I don't see him playing, so you can't blame the Mets for moving on from him.
No, I mean, I get
right.
That. Eventually you got to. It just seemed like, he was the golden boy for so long, and they just kept holding on and holding on. You're right. This seems to be the kind of the final straw. I mean, Todd Frazier is, I don't know if he's younger, but he's definitely better.
Yeah, well
sure.
More power. Yeah. I don't know if he hits for a better average.
No, his average is pretty low.
Yeah.
Let's see, where is... I didn't know they signed Adrian Gonzalez. How did I miss that? Did they trade for him?
What?
When did the Mets get Adrian Gonzalez?
About, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Did they trade or did he sign?
I believe.
That's a huge pickup.
I don't know if that's a huge pickup.
No, he's done at this point?
He's enough. Well, he's been struggling, yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at their lineup. I mean, he's the clear-cut first baseman of what I see.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about if Adrian Gonzalez could rejuvenate himself. You got Adrian, you got Cabrera, Reyes, and Todd Frazier. That's a halfway decent infield. I mean, Wilmer Flores kind of platooning. And what do they got? That Rosario kid too. The new he was a rookie last year. I mean, Jay Bruce, Cespedes, and Conforto in the outfield. That's not a bad team. I mean, if Gonzalez could be halfway decent, the pitching's
with that pitching staff.
Yeah, the pitching's obviously the key. I mean, you're talking about
they've got some arms there, and I don't know what's going to happen with Matt Harvey.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing with Harvey.
Like he's got that arm at this point. It's
Harvey, DeGrom, and
like
what's the last guy? Syndergaard, yeah.
It looks like it says David Wright's on the 60-day disabled list as soon as February 14th.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure the 60-day disabled list is like tattooed on the back of David Wright, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking at baseballreference.com. He didn't play in 2017 at all, and they're saying multiple surgeries on shoulder and neck and back to try to get him healthy, and that his timetable for 2018 is still up in the air. Yeah, the issue the Mets are going to face is that it looks like he's still under contract through 2020 and not at
$47 million.
Yeah. He's 20 this year, 15 next, 12 the year after that.
Maybe we need to have a Bobby Bonilla type contract buyout,
Yeah, there you go.
Look, we'll give you $80 a year till the end of time until you go away.
The Mets hold an insurance policy which covers 75% of the salary.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, we're talking about 1982. What's that? Help me with my numbers here. That's 36 years old almost. Oh, he's 35 right now. So,
yeah,
I think David Wright's days are over in the MLB.
Yeah, which is too bad because he was a hell of a player.
Yeah, when he played, he was great.
Oh yeah,
and a good guy, in all intents and purposes that I've seen.
So, you texted me the other day, Andrew, about some stuff. We had talked back and forth. You got some inside connections in the MLB world. what are you hearing about the free agency period, or I guess lack thereof? What's been going on with these guys? When you've been talking to, your contacts, what have they been telling you with kind of the lack of movement? And frankly, there's a potential for some strikes, I'm hearing?
Yeah, that dreaded word, strike. When you first texted me and asked me about it, I hadn't heard. I hadn't heard about a possible strike, and so I've got a couple guys that I still talk to that are on some 40-man rosters in Arizona and in Florida, spring training, and I texted one of them and I said, "What have you heard?" And he said, "I haven't heard anything." And then the next day he texted me and he said, "There's a possible strike." And so I asked him, "What do you know?" And he said, "I don't know any details." Now, I don't know if he didn't want to elaborate for possible potential issues or whether he really doesn't know. I mean, he's just now made the 40-man roster, so he's new to the major leagues,
right?
If he makes it. But looking at it, it looks like that what Major League Baseball and what the Major League Baseball Players Association are trying to, when they're trying to communicate it, things aren't being communicated very well. There's some 100 free agents that have yet to be signed. And so I think the new commissioner, Rob Mansfield, has dropped the word collusion, which did not sit well with the owners, of course.
Right.
And the Players Association, they're, of course, upset because they can't get any of their players signed. I mean, here we are. It's February 7th, and pitchers and catchers report in 6 days. And 100 guys have yet to be signed, including guys like Jagr, Arrieta, Darvish. I mean, the list goes on and on, some big, big names. And so it begs the question, why? And so if you look further into it, the reason is the market. Guys like Scott Boras and other agents, they're looking for 4, 5, 6-year contracts, and owners are just refusing to give those, as evidenced by the Todd Frazier 2-year deal a couple days ago.
Now, do you think, Andrew, it's the length of the contracts that they're having an issue with, or is it the gargantuan salaries?
I think it's the length. The length of the contract. I think owners are less willing to go 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, we just talked about David Wright, and this is the reason. The Mets have all the millions of dollars wrapped up in David Wright until 2020. And so I think owners are starting to want to go more 2, 3-year contracts. The only guy that I can think of right now that got a bigger contract than that was Lorenzo Cain. What did he get, like 5 years, $85 million, Aaron?
I think something along that. But he's a young guy. I mean, we're talking about a Lorenzo Cain who I believe isn't hit 30 yet.
Right.
So Darvish and Arrieta have been around in this league for a while. And to be honest, I mean, Darvish's career has gone a little more south than, people had expected. And Jake Arrieta's career has been, kind of dormant to the, to a spike, basically with his Cubs tenure. I mean, and
right.
You know him in Baltimore. He just couldn't get his shit together, So, a lot of these guys.
It was all about Ed, yeah. It was all about a Ed in Baltimore.
Yeah, paying a guy like Clayton Kershaw, a GM can rest easy knowing that he knows what he's going to get. If I'm investing the time and the resources in a guy like Jake Arrieta or a guy like Darvish, I don't feel as good as what I'm going to get. Of what I'm going to get day to day, year to year. As far as that season by season, I feel like the length. Baseball's never been better as far as their money, that their income and their revenue. But my problem with it is that I feel like, the contracts of Miguel Cabrera and Stanton, eventually that hits a ceiling where even though there's no salary cap, we're going, dude, we got to pump the brakes on this somehow, or these are just going to get. I mean, we're talking about Bryce Harper, a $500 million man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of the owners are citing that they're wanting to stay under that cap. They're wanting to stay under that penalty that they'll incur if they go over that. And some of these guys are asking, and I mean, we saw it coming. I mean, we saw it coming 10 years ago with the insane contracts that some of these guys were getting.
Right.
I mean, Alex Rodriguez contract, I mean, that was a crazy contract that he signed, Alex Rodriguez.
Now let me ask you a question. What is the luxury tax penalty? What is that cap number, and then what is the tax penalty number?
That I'm not sure of, but I can look it up.
No, that's okay. I just didn't know if you had it at the top of your head. I mean, you were talking about Alex Rodriguez's contract and how that kind of set the standard. We got the Miguel Cabrera contract. Obviously, the latest one was...
Well, I can even go back further, and I talked to Aaron about this today. I mean, go all the way back to George Steinbrenner.
Right.
I mean, if you do the research in baseball, up until about 1980, Major League Baseball players were making between 6 and 7 times the average salary of a male in this country. After 1980, it reached 60 times, and now it's approaching 70 to 80 times that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy what George Steinbrenner did to the free agency, and it's snowballed, and we all saw it coming. And so now we're at this situation where owners they're not willing to put in 5, 6, 7 years of their money to certain players when you have a situation like David Wright. And I'm sure we could sit here and think of other situations.
Right.
The Bobby Bonilla contract was absolutely brilliant by Bobby Bonilla. I mean, that was one of the great contracts ever signed by a Major League Baseball player. He's still getting paid $1 million a year by the Mets.
Yeah, I think he's got, 7 more years, something like that?
I think it's like 7, yeah.
So I just looked up the salary cap tax, and I'm actually surprised. I didn't realize it was this high. So it's under the 2016 CBA, the Collective Bargaining Agreement. First-time offenders pay 20% on the dollar for every dollar over the salary cap that they spend. Second-time offenders pay 30%, and third and beyond is 50%.
So what is that number, though?
So the salary cap itself for the 2018 season is $197 million.
Wow. So you're looking at teams who have payrolls in the 200. Let's say, you said $197 million?
$197 million. So if you spend $200 million, that means you're $3 million over, and you're paying 20% on top of that. So you're paying $3.6 million.
You're talking Yankees, you're talking Dodgers, you're talking Red Sox.
Yep.
See, now that doesn't seem like a lot to me, because a third-time repeat offender who maintains a $200 million salary cap is only paying $1.5 million in a luxury tax. That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. That's why teams do it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But then you've got, I don't think it's an issue, when you're talking about the situation that we're in right today, you're not talking about the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Red Sox. You're talking about the Orioles. You're talking about the A's. You're talking about the Mariners. You're talking about those types of teams, those mid-market teams.
Right. If they have to jump up above 197, how much can they realistically pay given the markets that they're in?
Right. And I read an article today that said that a lot of the owners are willing to, take the losses for a while to save some money and to prove a point.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at, so let's look at 2018 MLB team salaries. Let me go to that. We're looking at 3 teams basically at this point who are above the tax threshold, which I know that money, that's the revenue sharing money that we've talked about for so long, right? So
right.
That luxury tax goes back into the other teams who remain under the threshold. So we're talking the LA Dodgers had a $248 million payroll.
Jesus.
Right. Yep.
So basically, what do we say? I don't know what number offender they are. Let's just say they've been a third-year offender because they've been offenders for a while.
Right. Well, this started in 2016, so if
they've been offenders for 3 years.
2016 and 17, then I don't know. Like, if they were over in 2015, I don't know if that counts against them under this new collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, let's just say they've been above all 3 years. So they're at the 50% threshold. So now we're talking about $50 million. So they're paying $25 million in luxury tax. They're basically paying the equivalent of a superstar player to have their other superstar players. And that's where I think that it begins to become a problem where I'm basically saying, here's a $25 million threshold that if I just take away the contract of I can't think of, Yasiel Puig, I don't know what he's making exactly, but guys like that, you're talking about, you're talking about $25 million just flushing it down the toilet, for teams like this.
And not just flushing it down the toilet.
To make the other teams better.
Right, you're giving it to your competitors.
Yeah, you're giving it to your competitors. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're basically making your other teams better by spending too much money, and I don't know. It's just it's an interesting situation.
But that's nothing to these teams. It really isn't. $25 million to the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers. They'll do that all day long just to stay competitive.
Right.
But when you
do they need
when
to?
you start talking about teams like the Twins or
Houston, look at Houston.
Houston.
Yeah.
What's Houston's salary this year?
What I saw was $124 million.
Wow.
They had a lot of young players.
Right.
And those young players are going to want to get paid here pretty soon. I guarantee you Carlos Correa is not making all that much money.
Right.
Which allows, or either even Springer. Springer's a young guy. Marwin Gonzalez, he's been around a little while, but he's not a star type guy, but he put up star numbers this year. They got a lot of young guys. Lance McCullers. A lot of their top players, what were they getting paid? Not a lot.
Right.
But they're going to have to get soon, so they're going to have to splinter that team. That's why they were able to, get a guy like Garrett Cole in the offseason.
Well, let's look at a situation. Let's look at a situation here. The J.D. Martinez Boston Red Sox duel standoff has been the most talked about of all the free agents right now.
Yeah.
As it stands, based on your numbers that you gave, I'm looking at Spotrac.com as far as their payrolls. The Boston Red Sox at this time are the only team above the threshold that you said, $197 million?
197, yeah.
They are the only team at this time above the $197 million total payroll. And we're talking about the Yankees. The Yankees are $157.
Holy
and that's
shit.
including Stanton's contract. A lot of those guys, Aaron Judge, a lot of those younger guys are still on smaller deals. They're going to get ready to get paid too. So, you're talking about, I see all these media reports that, a lot of people are saying, Boston needs to just suck it up and sign JD to whatever he wants to. You're talking about giving JD $30 million a year. Now you're looking at, they're repeat offenders. So you're looking at, $45 million a year for a guy who, yes, he's trending upward. But, like you're saying, he wants 5-6 years. The Red Sox want, the money he wants and the time he wants, the Red Sox, aren't ready to pay him that kind of contract.
JD wants $125 million for 5 years, and he wants to play right field.
Right.
And that's why he hasn't decided yet. Period.
Right. So, I think it's a lot more factors than just this collusion aspect. And you know what? At the end of the day, who does Rob Manfred work for? He works for the owners. So and that's the thing we said about Colin Kaepernick back in the day. If Colin Kaepernick wants to take a knee and, do his protest, fine. He's more than welcome to do it. They're more than welcome to say, look, you don't have a job in the NFL. And who do the owners have to answer to? No one. So look at baseball. Who do the owners have to answer to if they all have to sit there and decide, look, we've got to do something about these out-of-control contracts. Well, I know. We'll sit here and we will basically kind of create a standoff. You may not agree with it, but the fact of the matter is if I'm a baseball owner, I answer to nobody. And if I want to create a situation where I can get the other, 29 guys to agree with my situation, who's to stop me? There's no regulations in that. God, Philadelphia's payroll is only $44 million.
Jesus.
Anyways, go ahead, Andrew.
The Phillies?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say the other elephant in the corner is the rules, the speed-up rules that Mansfield. Am I saying his name right? Rob Mansfield?
Manfred.
Manfred. Yeah, I didn't think that was right. I don't know if you remember the piece I wrote for you for your website about 3 or 4 years ago about him when he was hired.
Yeah.
And all of the changes he wanted to make with the speed-up rules.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, he proposed some pretty crazy things. But the one stickler is the time limit for pitchers to deliver the pitch to home plate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big stickler in the sides of the Players Association. They don't want any parts of that. So he's told them. He said if we can get the average time for games under 3 hours at 2:55 this year, then he'll do away with that idea. But that's the other thing that the Players Association are balking at too. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really confident in this new commissioner. I don't know if he's dealing with things the right way. Some people are saying that he just needs to sit back and let things go and let things play out. But he's getting his nose in things. He's making comments, and it's pissing the players off.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to kind of see. Like you said, pitchers and catchers report in, 6 days? So, have to see what the shakeout of, because we're looking at, what's his name from Kansas City, still not signed either, Hosmer?
Hosmer signed with Kansas City, didn't he?
Or who am I thinking of, Moustakis?
Moustakis is what you're thinking of. Yeah, that's the guy that, where's he going to go? I mean, the best fit for him was New York. I don't think that's an option anymore, the Yankees. But yeah, that's a guy that, he's without a home too.
So, what do you make of this, the Players Union basically, we're talking about going to camp. They're talking about having a site for all of these free agents to continue to work out, basically. Good move?
Sure. I mean, they got to stay in shape. That's the first I've heard of it, what you're telling me. But, yeah, they got to stay in shape somehow. Sure.
Yeah, so J.D. Martinez, Darvish, Moustakis, and Arrieta are the big four. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to create kind of who's going to be the first domino to fall. But like you said, everybody's kind of – we're in year 3 of this collective bargaining agreement, and I think we've finally hit the situation where we're talking about a 50% luxury tax. And that's why I think a lot of these guys, even though, Andrew, you say it's nothing, it's a drop in the bucket to them, it doesn't seem to be that way.
Why not?
Everything I read, I'm reading all these articles that says most teams are trying to get themselves back under that threshold. And I think that's why the teams that can offer these $200 million contracts, like the Red Sox, like the Dodgers, like the Giants, Yankees, they're not doing it because if they jump over that 197, I guess it hurts them more than we would expect.
I guess so.
There's got to be. I mean,
I'm looking at that article. I'm looking at that article I saw today. It says Ohtani. Yeah, he was signed. Martinez, Darvish, Arrieta, Hosmer. Well, Hosmer was signed. Moustakis, Lance Lynn, Alex Cobb. He's a good pitcher. Yet he has yet to be signed. Logan Morrison, LaCroix, Holland. I mean, it goes on and on. It's crazy. Carlos Gomez, good player. Neil Walker.
Well, I think that's why the trading market has been a little bit more active than the actual free agent market, because you're talking about guys whose salaries you can control at this point. That's why Chris Archer's been a hot topic of discussion versus signing like a Darvish.
Right.
So it'll be an interesting, month here, because at some point in time somebody's got to give, and I can't imagine if the owners haven't broken by this point, I can't imagine they're going to. I think they're ready to go forward. Spike's got a weird face on his face.
Well, you just had like a, what's his name, Brady Bunch kid voice crack.
Damn, I was hoping nobody heard that.
Yeah,
I know my balls dropped in that sentence.
I definitely caught that one. I thought you would play off of it like you would make a joke as opposed to waiting for one of us to call you out on it.
I was kind of hoping to just let that go by.
Absolutely not.
Sorry, I hit puberty in hour number 2 of our podcast. So, but damn, I really was. I was like, damn, I hope nobody caught that. So anyways, Well, I could do my Belichick. Why is nobody signing these free agents?
No, the only thing that makes sense to me for these guys not getting signed is that it's the owners not necessarily being concerned about today's dollars, but tomorrow's dollars. Like, the salary cap is going up a little bit. Like, it's going up a couple $1 million every year. But these salaries are jumping astronomically. So,
right.
It's got to be about saving their skin for the future. Because eventually these guys aren't going to be satisfied with a $25 million contract. It's going to be $50.
Well, that's the thing with Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper comes available next season. That's another guy. He puts another wrinkle in this. If they can stay below the luxury tax threshold this year, and I'll have to do some research on it, because if you're a first-time offender, then you're a second-time offender, but then your third year you don't break that, do you reset?
Yeah, it resets.
Okay, so now all these teams who are trying to get under the threshold, do you think, Andrew, they're trying to get under that threshold so that when they're first-time offenders next year, they can throw the Brinks truck, they can throw the entire enchilada at Bryce Harper and only have to pay, what'd you say, 20% luxury tax?
Yeah, 20% the first year.
That's another kind of a wrinkle in the plans, too.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, these guys are businessmen, and they're thinking about those types of things all the time. And Bryce Harper, man, when he hits the block, he might break records on his contract.
Yeah, and that's another thing that kind of just started thinking about was, he's going to command money. I mean, and he's already told Washington, he's not willing to take a discount from them. So I think a lot of these teams, especially the Yankees, if they, God forbid, they could get frickin' Stanton and Harper in the same goddamn outfield.
Oh, that just makes me sick to even think about.
So we'll have to play.
And Harper, Judge.
Oh, yeah, and Judge. I forgot about Judge.
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, don't forget about Judge.
Who would play center? Harper?
It's got to be, right?
Judge would.
Judge would play center?
Judge would play center, yeah.
Wow. And then where would you put, what's his face, Hicks? Platoon?
Who?
Aaron Hicks. They're center fielder right now. I know he's not Stanton, Judge.
Gardner's their center fielder right now.
Oh,
Hicks is a platoon guy.
Okay, so where would you put Gardner? Gardner's gone, right, at that point?
Yeah, Gardner's right. Or you could DH one of them. I mean, you could DH
Stanton, Hicks, and Judge.
Giancarlo. You could put Gardner in center and Bryce in right and Judge in left and DH Giancarlo.
Ooh, I just got chills just thinking about that.
Yeah.
For the next decade.
It makes me sick.
All right, well, let's wrap it up there. Any thoughts on anything we talked about today, Spike?
I'm curious to see how the Colts respond to the Josh McDaniels thing. I know the GM came out today and gave a rah-rah, drop the mic type rally. But that's the one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing in the coming days as to who they get as the coach, how they try to hype up the rivalry with the Patriots, with the non-divisional opponent.
The rivalry
Patriots.
is back on.
Yeah, who gives a fuck about the Colts? But no, it's just that part to me is going to be the most interesting thing to watch in the immediate future.
I can say as long as they're hanging up AFC Championship participant banners, it's not a rivalry.
No, that just cracks me up. I actually saw that the Patriots are 20-7 against the Colts in the last 20 years, with average margin of victory being about 20 points.
Yowzers. Yeah, so, Andrew, what are any thoughts on anything we talked about this episode?
Yeah, of course, I'm worried about this looming strike and boycott as being a baseball fan, and the fact that it just came up within the last couple of days. I'm really interested to see who gets signed over the next couple of days before pitchers and catchers report on the 13th, and see if there's going to be some kind of boycott or strike during spring training. What I think is going to happen, there could be a strike or a boycott during spring training, and we might lose some spring training games, but I think clearer heads will prevail, and they'll probably come up with something in week 2 or 3 of March, and maybe extend spring training that last week in March, so I can see some games during my spring break.
There you go.
I looked at my schedule, and I saw that my spring break was the last week in March, and the spring training game stopped the week before I went on spring break. So hopefully this is a blessing in disguise for me, selfishly.
There you go. There you go. Looking out for number one. We appreciate it, Andrew.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, this is my thoughts are, you kind of both took the lead. I'm interested to see how the strike or potential strike or lack of free agent signing is going to impact the beginning of the MLB season and how the players, because it usually takes pitchers a little bit longer than hitters to get, kind of back in the swing of things. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. So,
did you mean to make that pun? It takes hitters a while to get back in the swing of things.
Are you going to call me out on every thing?
Yes, you gigantic asshole, yes.
Well, I guess it's a good time to stop this podcast before Spike nitpicks it to death. I'll tell you what, I'll let him edit this, and then he can nitpick it to death.
Fuck that noise.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, for Andrew, for Spike, I am Aaron, the producer behind the glass, Desiree. She's giving a thumbs up. We turned her mic down a long time ago. Since her battery died on her phone. What good is the crack research staff if there's no research?
Exactly.
So anyways, we appreciate you listening and tuning in. Again, catch us on Forward Mile Podcast Network. We'll be up on there. You can subscribe to their website. We also will be on 12 Ounce Sports Radio. You can listen to us on Saturday morning. I guess you'll be listening to us at that point. But we are on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern and Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. No, that's not right? That's not right. Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern and Tuesdays at 8 p.m.
There
Eastern.
you go.
I'll get it right one day. All this damn Eastern. I'm not a good time zone kind of guy. So, anyways, also you can always check out our podcast on vegassquares.com. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Listen to us. Follow us on Twitter, all that other snap-faced Insta chats, and have a great night and weekend and day and month.
Just shut the fucking thing off.